Hello Quilt Smarties, I'm Maddie from Quilt Smart, and I'm going to show you today about our new grid. What I have here is the 2.5 inch PiX Smart Grid, and I absolutely love this. We've been working on it for a while, but it's a way to do half square triangles or regular squares or half squares right on the grid, and you're going to sew it right to it. So the blocks like Jacob's Ladder, this is one of my favorite blocks, that's got all those half square triangles in it. And this process makes it so much easier to do. This is a little pin cushion we made, and you can see that we've got the half square triangles on the outside. And I'm going to show you a little block today that we're going to make similar to that you can use for a little mug mat or a pot holder or something like that. And it's going to be super easy. And then after we do that, well, maybe before we do that, I'm going to show you some of the things that we can do with it. So here's one little heart, and you can see how those would be hard. Plus, this is tiny. So this is our 1.5 inch grid, and you can see how much easier it is, or how easy it would be if you could sew those right on the lines. Here is our just a cute little classic sailboat, and we all want one of those, especially for those little guys. And here's another heart with well, it's really just the colors are a little bit different in that one. And I also have here, this one doesn't have half square triangles in it, but it's just blocks. With this, our previous grid that we had, this is really just an upgrade, but our previous grid that we had, always you got perfectly matched squares. And that is one of the very, very cool things about sewing your grids, sewing patchwork on the interfacing. But now the added thing is that we're also now able to do the half square triangles. And as you can see, this one has a lot more half square triangles in it. That would be kind of a bear to do if you had to make all your half square triangles ahead of time. They just wouldn't match up nice. But with this technique, they do. Here's another one, lots of half square triangles, and they match up absolutely beautifully. Perfect points and all. So how do we do that? I'm going to take a little 9 patch of grid, and I'm going to cut some squares, place some squares. I'm going to start by, I call this the lop and fuse method. What we're going to do is we're just going to lop off about 1/4 inch, 3/8 of an inch of the corner so that you have that, and I have some already done there. And then we are going to make our design. And the design, you can put your half squares, your lopped squares here, and what you're going to get is whatever you want, really. So you could do something that is, this would be sort of like a Jacob's Ladder if we did it that way, like a little Jacob's Ladder. And you can already see how it's going. If you wanted them to all go the same way, you can go like that. So the nice thing about it is you can visualize it right there. And I think what I'm going to do is that little Jacob's Ladder block. So a mini ladder. Okay, and then I'm going to take my background squares and I'm going to fill in all of the other parts of the block. So now you take the whole blocks to the background and you put them over all the half squares and the half square triangles. The reason you do that is this is now going to also fuse to the background. So you can see how easy it is to design and to lay out your squares. Those you want right sides together when you do that. So just fiddle with those a little bit and put this one down. And now all my ones that are over the half square triangles are right sides together and the other ones are right side up. Now take the iron and we're just going to fuse that. And you would want to use an applique pressing sheet if you want around the edges there, or you can use a little iron, like this is a little iron. Either way. The more you iron, the less, or the more that the interfacing, the glue dots on the interfacing will dissipate a bit. So you don't want to over iron it. but you want it to be ironed enough so that when you pick it up, they don't fall off. So let's see how we did here. And you can see right there how the half square triangles are. So I'm going to move over to the sewing machine and show you how we do that part. So here are what the instructions look like, and you can get these either by themselves or you can get a pack of 4 pieces of interfacing with it. And inside of it, you get these great instructions. It walks you right through it, exactly what we're doing on this video, and a little bit more even. And then along the side, there's a few little samples that you can see, some notes, some tips, things like that. This is the step I'm going to show you right now. So I'm just going to use regular 2.0 quilting stitch length. And one thing that's cool about this grid is called PiX Smart Grid, P-I-X, and I named it that because of these X's. These hash marks are what they would have the same function as the X's, but for half squares. So you would do the same concept for a half square, only you would be sewing that way instead of this way. But the one thing I just love about this technique is that we're going to sew from this X line to this line, but are we stopping there? No, we're going to keep going. And I just think that's very cool. Now, if you're not too good with sewing a straight line from here to here, you could draw those lines before you sew them. So you can see that what is really nice about this is that you can see exactly where you're sewing. You're going to sew right into the corner. And what I particularly love is that on certain patterns you come across, and if you have another half square there, you just keep going. And your half square, like this one's not even cut perfectly straight, but my eye is following this line. And if you don't think you can sew between those lines, just draw a line beforehand, and you'll be able to do that. And then I'm just going to jump over to the other side here and do the same on the other side. So I'm just eyeballing, but again, you could draw a line if you wanted to. And do make sure that your squares underneath are flat. I've sewn a couple with them under, so now I just check, and that takes care of that. Okay, so you can see how that is done. And then when you turn these over, you're going to take the piece over here and fold it back. And you can see how you have a beautiful half square triangle. I like to take this, peel it back, and cut. Now, if this one is darker than this one, you can cut this one a little bit over this one. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. And you can also use a let me turn this around this way so I'm not cutting backwards. You can also use a add a quarter. It's really nice for this too. And you can see how then you would just fold this back here, and then we'd go back to the pressing and do all 4 of those. So I'll show you those in just a minute. So if you lost any squares on the way, just fuse those back in. And an applique pressing sheet is helpful. And just fuse those over, and you're still going to have the little lines showing because this little bit of dotted line is actually intentional, and that's for the next step. You fold like this, and that's so that you don't have any bulk there. We're just going to stitch from hash mark to triangle and on, and that's going to be the perfect 1/4 inch seam. So we'll go do that next. And you want to sew right on the little dotted lines, or fold right on the dotted lines, and sew from tip to tip of the X's and the hash marks. And you got nice fold there, nice intersections there, but it's a little hard to tell until you sew all of them. See how that dotted line, I don't know if you can tell, but that was kind of showing. It wasn't really at the fold. I really want to get it right exactly at the fold. But you do get a little bit nicer piece if you do that. And now we clip. I've tried this without clipping, and you can do it, but you do get a little more bulky seam allowances when you do that. So we just clip at the intersections on the dotted line. Don't be clipping on the hash mark. You want to clip on the dotted line between the X's. And then I'm going to just sew the other way, having these go in opposite directions. And I'm still sewing from end to end of the hash and the X's. I like to give it a little pull too, if I can, to open those seams up, because you could instead have ironed that too. And I've done it both ways. It might depend on how much of a hurry I'm in. And I can tell already that I hit that seam allowance very nicely, and it's going to match perfectly. And now I'm going to do the other one, and you can see how cool it's looking. And now I'm just going to make sure that I fold those seam allowances. If this one's down here, it's going to be down there, and the one behind it will be up. On a bigger piece, that makes a little more difference. You'll want to think about that just a little bit more. And get the fold line really nice. That one had flipped up. Sometimes I leave them if they flip up. If I don't catch them, it's not the end of the world. Life is short. All right, now this is all done and only needs to be pressed. And I will show you how great these are. Look at this. Now, you could tell I was probably hurrying just a little bit, but each of these are about 1/4 of an inch in. So when we sew this into a block, it's going to be perfect there. And you can see how nicely these are matched here. And hardly had to do anything at all. And that's what the back looks like. Isn't that cool? All right, so the pressing, if you ever have a piece and you see, oh, something doesn't just match quite right, try pressing it before you get too worried about it, because the pressing makes a huge difference. And you can press it on both sides if you want. You press the seams the way they want to go, and that's usually, they just kind of fall where they want, and you can press them that way. And see, this corner almost, or intersection, kind of looked like it didn't match. I just ironed it and it's perfect. So it's perfection without even trying. I think you're going to really love this. So you can get our 1.5 inch, 2 inch, 2.5, and 1.5, 2 and 2.5 inch on point. So I hope you go check out our PiX Smart Grid, and you guys will love this for all of your projects that you do at home. Okay, so now that you know how to do this, and I showed you sort of a mini Jacob's ladder there, I thought I'd go back to show you these again. And now you can imagine that on the back side, when you had these laid out, you would just, the squares or the X's are within the seam allowances, so you don't see those as well. But what you can see is how easy it would be to stitch all the way down there, all the way down there. So it makes your blocks go really, really fast. And I think you can use graph paper to design different blocks of your own, or go online and find blocks. There's no limit. And on this grid, you can sew anyone with those size half square triangles. So go out there, enjoy it, have fun sewing.